Hello and welcome back to the Coin Stories podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Brunell, and I'm talking to leading voices in Bitcoin and macroeconomics about their origin stories, Bitcoin headlines and news topics, and this movement to fix the world by fixing the money. This podcast does not provide financial advice. Before I share this week's episode, here are some messages from my sponsors who make this show possible. First of all, are you ready for Bitcoin 2023? I certainly am. This year's Bitcoin conference was absolutely amazing. I got to spend a week in Miami with tens of thousands of Bitcoiners from around the world, and I'm so grateful that I had the chance to anchor Bitcoin Magazine's live desk and MC the main stage. If you missed the event, you can catch all 3 days of incredible Bitcoin content over on Bitcoin Magazine's YouTube channel. And also, it's never too early to start making plans to attend the next conference. Bitcoin 2023 tickets are already available and super early bird rates do not last long. So you can visit b.tc/conference/2023 and secure your pass before prices increase. This show is also powered by OKCoin, my favorite place to DCA without the crazy fees. OKCoin recently launched an amazing initiative called Crypto for All, which is aimed at democratizing knowledge and access to Bitcoin. OKCoin is one of the fastest growing and most secure global cryptocurrency exchanges that serves all your needs for Bitcoin and is committed to investing in educational content, funding crypto developers and entrepreneurs from underrepresented groups, and helping more diverse talent work on crypto ecosystem projects and careers. OKCoin has actually contributed more than $1 million to Bitcoin core devs and counting, has one of the most active Lightning nodes, and recently launched Sats mode. To open an account and start stacking, head to okcoin.com/Natalie and get $50 in Bitcoin when you sign up. I'm excited to share my guest today is Zuby. He is a rapper, a podcaster, an entrepreneur. He has a huge following on social media, and we talked all about his background, origin story, how he built his career, how he discovered Bitcoin, and why he feels Bitcoin allows us the chance to look at the future with hope. Here's Zuby. Well, Zuby, thank you so much for joining me. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while now. You have a lot of fans.
Thank you, Natalie. I do my best. I've been building up my so-called brand, building up my name for about 15, 16 years at this point, and things have been accelerating a lot over the last couple of years, and it's been beautiful to see.
Yeah, I bet. I can't wait to hear this story. So let's start at the very beginning. I read that you were born in London. I think we're the same age, but you were raised in Saudi Arabia. Like, take me back. Tell me about your childhood.
Yeah, sure thing. So I was born actually in a city called Luton, which is less than an hour north of London. Some people from the UK would know that place. When I was a baby, my dad got a job opportunity to go work in Saudi Arabia. I don't remember this. This is just me recollecting the story from what I've been told. And so I'm the youngest of 5 kids. So our whole family of 7 went out to Saudi Arabia.
Family of 7?
Yeah,
Wow.
family of 7. Yeah, much bigger than that now, but immediate family of 7. So yeah, I went out to Saudi Arabia. All of my earliest memories are from Saudi Arabia. I went to school there from preschool up until 5th grade. And then actually when I was 11 years old, I went to boarding school in the UK. So from the age of 11, I was traveling internationally by myself. I went to 2 different schools in the UK from the age of 11 up until 17. And I did really well in school, got top grades in everything, and I got accepted to Oxford University, which is where I went and I studied computer science there. Now, when I was in Oxford in my first year of university, I started rapping. I'd become a big hip hop fan in my teenage years, and I started rapping in 2005 is when I first started. Just began as a hobby, doing it for fun, not taking it super seriously. And then I download beats off of the internet and go into my friend's dorm room, AKA studio, and we would record tracks. So I recorded a couple tracks and sent them out to my friends and my family and got some positive feedback, put a little demo together and actually got demo of the month in a local music magazine. And then about 10 months into me starting, I released my first album, which was called Commercial Underground. So that was a totally independent release, 8-song album. I put that out there. I mean, this is back in you have to remember, this is 2006. So this is prior to streaming. This is back when people were primarily buying CDs.
Mhm.
iTunes was relatively new. Social media and smartphones were very much in their infancy. So even though 2006 may not sound like that long ago, things have
Mhm.
changed very, very significantly since then. MySpace was the biggest platform. Facebook was just starting up and limited to certain universities and so on. So I put the CD together, actually made 50 copies to begin with. I got 50 copies made, and I sold all of them in the first week. So a lot of
Wow.
people were excited to support me. So I was like, okay, cool. I took the money I made from that 50, I went back and I made 200. And then in the next couple of weeks, I sold those 200. And then I went back and I made 1,000. And over the course of time, I guess over about maybe a 1.5, let me get this right, about 1.5 to 2 year period. I mean, in total, I ended up selling 3,000 copies of my
Wow.
very first album. This is just hand to hand. Once I'd exhausted my initial pool of people, I would just start traveling out to the city and standing out there, talking to people on the street, playing them my music and selling my CDs for £5 a pop. So I guess that's what, around $7 or so at the time, $7, $8. And then yeah, I graduated. Before I graduated, I had a job offer from a management consulting company. So I graduated when I was 20. And then I took a year out and I did my music full time for 1 year. I released my second album, which was called The Unknown Celebrity. And I was just a road warrior. I was just traveling all over the UK, playing shows and doing gigs where I could get them, standing out there on the street, talking to strangers, rain, sleet, snow, whatever, selling, every day just out there selling my music. And then I'm trying to give a proper timeline here. In 2008, I moved to London, started working in the corporate world as a management consultant while moonlighting as a rapper on the weekends and in the evening. I put out my third release, an EP called How I Feel, in 2010. And then I had another album called Commercial Underground 2 in 2011. And the big turning point was November 2011, which is when I left my job. So November 2011, I left my job, became a full-time rapper, became self-employed, registered my company. So this is 11 years ago now. And I took the plunge, just left what I was doing. I was on this corporate path. I got I got a promotion that I wanted. And then the next month I handed in my notice and went on this journey. And then, man, from 2011 to 2018, I was just grinding,
Okay.
traveling all over. Yeah, go ahead. Let me,
Well, wait,
I'm
I
giving a
want to
lot of the
fill
story.
in, I
So,
want to
okay,
fill in
go in,
some
go in.
color here because this is really,
Sure.
really fascinating. So when you were a kid or when you were younger and you were influenced by hip hop, first of all, was that in Saudi Arabia or when you were in boarding school in the UK? Like what were your influences? Because I'd imagine that a lot of that is coming in from the US, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So where I grew up in Saudi Arabia, I was in an expat community. So I was surrounded by people from all over the world. It's why I don't sound English. Every time people hear my voice,
Mhm.
they're always like, how come you don't have a British accent? Or what happened to your British accent? And it's like, I've never had one. So actually, if you talked to me before I went to boarding school in the UK, I sounded 100% American. Now I probably sound more American than I do British, but it's I don't know, maybe 80-20, 70-30 or something like that. And so I was surrounded by people from all over the world growing up. UK, Canada, all over the Middle East, parts of Africa, parts of Asia, lots of Americans. Most of my school teachers were American in Saudi Arabia. And then, I shifted over to this British system. So actually, as a kid, funnily enough, I wasn't a big music fan when I was a child, which is kind of weird because I played piano and I actually used to do piano recitals. So
Wow.
yeah, I did piano recitals,
Some
and then
Bach or Mozart?
not quite that good, not quite that good, but I was decent. And then I stopped playing piano when I was about 13, I think. I just I was just interested in all these other things as I went into my teens. And I used to play trombone for a little while as well, but I wasn't a big hip hop fan until I went to boarding school. That's when I really fell in love with it. I've got a couple older brothers, and they were rap fans, so I remember them playing hip hop when I was a kid, and so I had some familiarity with it. But it's really when I was like 12 or 13 years old out in the UK that I really became a hip hop fan. And
Who were
then,
the artists? What songs and artists?
hmm, okay, so this was when who really got me into hip hop. This is when like Eminem was just coming out, to give you
Oh.
like a perspective of the sort of time frame.
Uh-huh.
So we used to listen to, my friends and I, we'd listen to a lot of Dr. Dre, Eminem, Nas, Jay-Z, LL Cool J, Ice Cube, Wu-Tang,
Totally.
Busta
We are
Rhymes.
the same
Yeah.
age. Yeah.
Yeah. That's some of the stuff that was popping at the time. And then once I was in my mid-teens, that's when you had the rise of 50 Cent and G Unit and Kanye West and Dipset and like all of that,
Yeah.
that whole era. So in my mid-teens is when I was probably like the most hip hop crazy. Like we would just, you have to remember, we're all there in boarding school. Like you've just got these
Yeah.
bunch of boys in their teenage years, from all over the world,
Mhm.
all living in this strange place in the UK. And we would just buy like every single album that came out. We had subscriptions to the Source magazine and Double XL. We'd keep up to date with everything and just buy everything that came out. So that's when it went hip hop crazy. And then it was, it was when I was 18 that I actually started rapping myself, when I went to university. So that's how I became a hip hop fan. And
Mhm.
then when I was a couple years older, that's when I tried my hand at making my own music.
And did I read correctly that one of your parents was a doctor, the other was a journalist?
That is correct. Yeah, my dad is a doctor. He actually just retired this year after 49 years in the medical field. So
Wow.
he's finally retired as of just 2 months ago or so. And yeah, my mom was a journalist. She was actually a journalist in Nigeria. She used to be a news reporter, in fact, for some time. So she'd be on the TV reporting the news. I don't remember this,
Ah.
but I've seen videos of it. And then she did some journalism when we were in Saudi Arabia. She wrote for one of the local newspapers there.
Cool.
And then she worked in the community center as well. So yeah, so it was my dad's medical job that took the whole family out to Saudi Arabia. And
So,
I ended up being there for, in total, about 20 years. So that's really where I
wow.
grew up in a way.
Okay, wait. So, two questions. Number one, were your parents encouraging that you could kind of pursue anything? I mean, I know you mentioned computer science, but rap. Some parents would be like, "What are you doing? That's not a stable path."
Yeah, I mean, God bless my parents. I'm so thankful for my parents and my family, because they could have really given me a hard time with this. And I know a lot of musicians, and I know a lot of people who really had to fight their family and fight their parents on this particular issue. In fact, some of them ended up giving up on their potential music careers because they kind of couldn't deal with going against the grain in that way. But my parents, God bless them, throughout my entire life have always been supportive, and perhaps more importantly, trusting. Right? They trust that even if I'm doing something that in the short term temporarily might seem a little out there or crazy, they know that they didn't raise an idiot. And that if I believe in something, they also know I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
So let's support him, instead of trying to get in his way, let's support him. So
that's
there's a good
great.
chance as we record this, my mom or my dad is probably wearing a Team Zuby hoodie or t-shirt
Oh,
right now as we speak. They wear my merchandise all the time. They come to my gigs and have done since back in 2006. My parents have been very, very supportive. So I'm truly grateful for that, because as a creative and as an entrepreneur, there are so many battles that you have to constantly fight, and having to fight one uphill against your
mhm.
own family
Yeah.
is one I'm glad that I didn't have to fight.
Well, I'm also just curious about Saudi Arabia, spending so much
Mhm.
time there. I feel like there are just a lot of misconceptions in general about the Middle East. I think one of my favorite episodes of the Anthony Bourdain show is actually Saudi Arabia. So,
Mm.
can you give me kind of what do you want everyone to know about the country based on your experience there?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, one of the greatest things that I get criticism for is so-called defending Saudi Arabia, because people in the West like to think that it's this completely barbaric, backwards hellhole, and people know all the negatives, but oftentimes none of the positives. And people's views are primarily shaped entirely by what they see in the media. So I think it's important to say that where I grew up was an expat community. Where I grew up was like a little bubble. I mean, in terms of what it looked like a suburb in California or Texas or something like that. I wasn't living out in the desert in a tent riding camels or anything like that. So there's lots of different sides to somewhere like Saudi Arabia. I think this is the case with a lot of the Gulf states. So if you live in Saudi Arabia or Bahrain or UAE and so on, as a foreign expat, whether you're American or Canadian or British, say, versus if you are local, you're going to live in a little bit of a different world. So I think it's worth saying that upfront. But with that said, I mean, where I lived was a very small community of like 1,400 people. So if you wanted to do anything interesting or you wanted to just go out shopping or whatever, you'd go into the city. You'd go into one of the cities and you'd go into real Saudi, shall we say. So a lot of stuff was different. There are things that are kind of like, I don't know, I guess you could say sort of minor superficial differences. To give an example, the weeks ran from Saturday to Wednesday.
Oh.
And then Thursday and Friday are the weekend rather than Saturday and Sunday being the weekend as it is in the Western world. So growing up for me, school started on Saturday and you finish school on Wednesday. I'd go to church on Friday. When I say go to church, there are no church buildings in Saudi Arabia, but in the community, we'd have our church services either in the school gym or in the theater. Wow. So that was different. The shops would shut 5 times a day for the prayers. Right? You'd hear the prayer call go out and then all the shutters come down and, you have to pause your shopping for a while. So there are little things like that. And I think it's important for people to understand that from a socio-political perspective, the whole foundation of the country is designed and shaped and influenced in a very different way. So for Westerners, people are, I mean, the last 2 years have made this debatable, but we supposedly live in liberal democracies, right? So you have political parties, you have elections, you've got votes. The concept of a country such as the USA in particular is fundamentally built around the idea and principles of liberty and freedom. It doesn't always uphold those as truly as it should, but that's the idea. That's kind of the highest ideal on paper. But people have to understand that that's not a global universal. So a country such as Saudi Arabia or many other Islamic countries, firstly, Saudi Arabia is not a democracy. It's a monarchy. It's ruled by there's no voting, there's no elections, there's no political parties, there's no political left and political right and all of that. It is a monarchy. The rules and laws are primarily informed by the majority religion, which is Islam. And they have a different way of doing things because they're not aiming towards the same value, and that influences absolutely everything. Now, there are lots of very valid criticisms of that, but a lot of Westerners have this idea that the whole country. I mean, people think of this. Saudi is weird because it's one of the only countries I know where people tend to judge it off of the worst and most critical aspects of it. If you see what I mean. So if somebody asked me what the USA is like or what the UK is like, I wouldn't just tell them all the bad stuff, right? I wouldn't explain the country based on the worst actions of the government and the worst things that have happened in history and like the most terrible aspects of the society, culture, laws, and so on. I don't think that would be very fair. I also don't think it would be fair to judge the American people based on the actions of the American government. I think in most countries, nobody is more critical of the government in many cases than the people themselves, and that goes across the board with lots of nations. So as someone who's traveled a lot and grown up in that kind of environment, it gives you a more nuanced perspective on humanity, I think, and the different social, cultural values, how those inform people's behavior, how they inform politics, how they inform certain standards and rules that are put into society, both in the legal perspective and in the social perspective. And there are lots of valid criticisms of a country like Saudi Arabia, plenty. But there are also many things that are good about it. I mean, it was a great place to grow up. It was a wonderful, wonderful place to grow up.
Why do you feel that way?
Extraordinarily safe. I had a fantastic education, way better than most people would get in the UK or in the US. they really look after if you work out there, certainly as an expat. And again, you're going to have there's going to be different perspectives on this. Like there are people who work in countries in the Middle East. The same goes for, places like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, where migrant workers from certain countries are not treated well, right? And are not paid properly and don't get good accommodation. That's totally valid criticism. If you are a Westerner, see, here's something that's very different is like I think one of the, sorry, my brain's kind of all over here. I think one of the best things that a country like the USA does is over the course of time, there's been this strive for proper equality under the law, proper equality and fairness under the law. So whether you're a man, a woman, black, white, from this country or that country, we apply the same rules to everybody, right? Where I grew up in Saudi Arabia, I mean, if you went into the main city, and this has changed now, by the way. So I was last in Saudi in 2011, and I'm actually really interested to visit. Firstly, you can visit now. They didn't used to have tourist visas. So that's new. I believe women being able to drive was legalized in 2018. When I grew up in Saudi Arabia, women couldn't drive. They could within the compound of where I lived.
Wow.
But not outside of it. When I lived there, there were the Matawa, that's what they were called, who were like religious police. So there were religious police in different cities who make sure that people are adhering to certain things. As far as I'm aware, they have far less power now, or they're not, or I think they've even been disbanded in some cases. When I was there, there were, absolutely no music concerts, no like, restaurants and things like that were segregated. Even in McDonald's, KFC, segregated. You have a family section and you have an all male section. So it's very different. Like there's a lot of stuff that's different. But some of this has changed, right? Some of this has changed, especially from 2018. There have been a lot of changes. I haven't been back there for over a decade at this point.
Wow.
But there are a lot of changes. So I think even if I went back to the country now, I would probably be quite shocked and surprised, because certain things will be very different to how it was when I grew up. But, with any country, people like different places for different reasons, and there's pros and cons to everywhere. So when it comes to me discussing Saudi Arabia, I'm not trying to, I think some people think one of the criticisms I get is that I'm trying to sort of paint it as some like totally idyllic and perfect utopia. No, it's far from it. But there are plenty of things that are better there than they are in the UK. There's plenty of things that are better than they are in the US, and people don't really like to hear that because they want to think that everyone, these countries are superior in every sort of way. And I'm just like, that's not true. Are there things that are better? Yes, but there's things that are better there too. It's like, it's not as black and white as people think it is. And if you're going to have a strong view on something, it's good for that to be based on, it's good for that to be based on something, right? There's plenty of countries I don't have strong opinions on. I've never been there, right? Like I've never been to Kazakhstan. I don't have a strong view on what life is like in Kazakhstan and what things are good and what things are bad. I mean, I could go on Wikipedia and look some stuff up or see what makes the news, but that's not going to give me a very clear picture. And this happens with everywhere. I've got friends in the UK who are afraid to come to the US because they think they're going to get shot, or they think that the racist police officers are going to, shoot them if they're black or whatever, because that's what they see in the news. That's what they see in the media. They Texas, oh my gosh, aren't people just having shootouts in the street? Oh my gosh, I could never send my child to school in America because it's not safe. They'll get caught in a school shooting or something. And it's just like, and you can understand where these things come from, right? Shootings do happen in America, right? Like it does. School shootings exist, but is that a reasonable concern? Is that like the main thing? Is that something that should stop you going to the country? Should you not go to London because you think you're going to get stabbed by someone, or you think you're going to get caught up in some grooming gang scandal? It's like, look, you can recognize bad things occur, but it's not, it wouldn't be reasonable and fair to say that's what makes a city or that makes a country or anything like that. So anyone curious about anywhere, I recommend you go there and pay it a visit, because you may be surprised, and it'll certainly widen your perspective. Even if you don't end up liking a certain place, you'll at least then, be able to judge it on more reasonable grounds.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. I think we tend to make a lot of generalizations, and social media makes that very easy as well
Yeah.
to spread those generalizations. But out of curiosity, did you have a concept for money when you were younger? Did you feel like you weren't worried about money? You wanted to be rich someday? I don't even know what currency you used in Saudi Arabia, but just kind of curious, like money when you were younger, what was
Mm.
money to you?
Yeah. Oh man, I feel like when I was young, money went very far. That's for sure. So growing up, reals, Saudi reals are the currency there. One real is somewhere around $5 to give people an indication. So, I mean, I remember growing up, if I had 500 reals, then I was rich. Like
Wow.
$100 went very, very far. Stuff is a lot cheaper in Saudi, by the way. So that money would go far. And there's no taxes. People don't know that Saudi has no taxes. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So my idea about money, hmm, I think it was probably typical of most children in that I didn't think about it all that much. I just knew that it was this thing that your parents work for and can take out of a machine in a wall,
So you
which
guys
kind of
you were
spits.
comfortable, right? I mean, going to
Yeah,
boarding school,
yeah,
I imagine you were comfortable.
yeah, yeah. We were comfortable. I don't have some story of
Mhm.
I've lived a blessed and privileged life in that sense. So I don't have any, I think my parents are and were and are good with money. And I
Mhm.
think just like with many other things, raised us to value things, taught me the importance of personal responsibility and working for, hard work paying off and being rewarded for your hard work. So, I'm
Mhm.
blessed that I never had to worry about where the next meal was going to come from, or, being able to, pay a rent or anything like that. But also I was taught not to be entitled, right? Not to think that, oh, money grows on trees. And that something I remember my parents teaching me a lot is that life is not fair. That's something I remember them saying often, because if I wouldn't get my way with something, I'd often say, that's not fair, as a lot of kids do. And they'd always say, well, Zuby, life is not fair. And that's true. I think it's a bit of a harsh lesson to learn as a child, but it's very
Yeah.
real. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people in our modern society don't want to accept that truth.
Mhm.
And I think that there are you can strive for fairness up until a reasonable level, but human beings are different in so many different sorts of ways.
Yeah.
And it's important for a society and certainly for a legal system to strive towards equality of opportunity.
Yeah.
Um, but there's never going to be any type of equality of outcome for a gigantic host of reasons due to, just diversity within the human species, people's different experiences and backgrounds, and where they're coming from, how
Motivations.
much
Yeah.
effort they put in,
Yeah,
motivation. Exactly. There are many, many different pieces
for sure.
to that puzzle. But
What
yeah, I think
attract
I learned. Yeah, sorry, I was going to say I think I learned more about money when I was like once I became an adult.
mm,
Not because school or even university really taught me much about it, but I think once I was in my early 20s after I'd graduated and I started doing a lot more reading of my own volition, and put in more effort about just trying to understand various things in the world, I think that's when I started to get a better understanding about what money actually is beyond this superficial notion of numbers on a screen or printed
yeah.
paper.
Got it. Well, ultimately, I want this to lead to sort of your Bitcoin journey, but I mean, what drew you to computer science? Because it seems like, the rapper, that's sort of the creative free spirit side. Computer
Mm.
science is, I feel like, on the polar opposite. So what happened there? Why computer science?
Yeah. So I'm someone who's always been I've got a very scientific, logical, rational brain, but I also have a very creative brain. I'm fortunate to have both of those things.
Mhm.
So I got into computer science. I chose that as my degree because all the various sciences were my best subjects at school: chemistry, biology, math, physics. Like I was very, very good at all of that. And I am and was very interested in technology. I've always been interested in computers and IT. And so it seemed like a natural fit for me to go into computer science. I'll be 100% honest with you, Natalie. I did not enjoy my degree. I
Oh,
didn't, yeah, I love my university. My university was great, but I didn't really enjoy studying computer science. I stuck it through. I did it. I got the degree. I didn't drop out or anything. But in hindsight, I possibly would have done a different subject. I'm not sure which one, maybe
it didn't light your
biology.
fire.
No, it didn't light my fire, but I still enjoyed my university experience because of all the other things that I
Mhm.
was doing, from my friends to sports. And I
Yeah.
didn't like hate my degree. I just wasn't enthused by it. And I'll be real with you, I also wasn't that good at it. And that was something that was very humbling for me, because not being cocky, but school was very easy for me
Mm,
from like from like the age of 5 to 17. I smashed school completely,
yeah.
like top
Amazing.
got yeah, I was top of like everything. And then the first the first exam I ever did in Oxford, I got 14%, 1 4. So I'm coming off the back
Uh-oh.
of like getting like, 90% plus, 90 to 100 and like everything my entire life. And then I did this exam and I got 14%. And that was very, very humbling. I was around, I was like, whoa, there's people here who are a lot smarter than me, at least in this subject. And so that was humbling. And also, what was funny with computer science is I'd never done any programming up until the point of university. But when I got there, I quickly learned that there were people on my course who had been programming and coding since they were 5.
Wow.
Right. So while I
Yeah.
was doing like normal 5-year-old stuff and playing sport and like doing my art and drawing and all this other stuff, living my life, they were coding. So
Wow.
there were people there who had like a 15, 16-year head start on me in that regard.
Well, do you think that at least your background and education in that space helped you to appreciate or understand Bitcoin sooner than maybe other people?
I do think so. I think that my degree helped me in a lot of indirect ways. I think one of the biggest things about computer science is just the whole concept of problem solving,
Hmm.
just dealing with hard problems and having to rack your brain and think outside of the box, to use that term. It was very, very mentally challenging and stimulating, and so I think that helped. It also helped with just, I think with a lot of stuff in technology and with computers, it just sort of scares people. Right? Like
Yeah.
once things get to any remote level of complexity, most people are just like, oh my gosh, like I'm totally out of my depth. This is very scary. And at least with me, even though I'm not a great programmer or anything like that, if I just see some code or something is a bit intricate, it doesn't scare me away in the way that it does for many others. So I think when I came across Bitcoin or something like that, and I actually looked into it, um, I wouldn't be able to go into all the code for it and explain all that to someone, but it wasn't this sort of like terrifying foreign
Sure.
concept. It was like, okay, I can, if I look into this, I can have some comfort with it.
Okay. Well, so you left sort of the corporate world, the 9 to 5 life.
Mm-hmm.
You became a rapper full time.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get to Bitcoin? What was that? What was that journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I want to say I first heard about Bitcoin probably around 2013 or 2014. Just heard the word, but I didn't do any. People always kick themselves about this part, right? I did no research into it.
Hmm.
I thought either it was like some kind of PayPal alternative, or I thought it was like just an in-game currency or something like that. You've got all these different video games and computer games out there, and they have like their money in
Hmm.
them. And I just saw it. I did no research. And then the real journey started in 2017. And I can't remember what exactly drew me to it. I think, if I remember correctly, I think there were a tiny number of people I follow on Facebook who are just posting about Bitcoin. Honestly, they were primarily posting about like the gains they were making, right? They were like about from an investment perspective and a number go up perspective. And it was like, oh my gosh, my Bitcoin's now worth this much and that much. And I was like, Bitcoin, okay, I've heard about this thing. And this is kind of October, November 2017. If anyone was around at that time, you'll remember that this was towards the top of a long bull market where the price of Bitcoin was just going up like a couple of $100 a day. And I was kind of watching this. I remember being on CoinMarketCap and kind of, all right, let me keep an eye on this thing. And it was just like every day the number would go up. And I was like, this is interesting. And so I'll be honest, I'll be totally transparent. My initial draw was just like, oh my gosh, I can make some money off of this, like potentially fast. I didn't have a ton of money to invest at the time.
You didn't from your rap career? It wasn't like sailing?
No, I'll be real with you, Natalie. Here's something interesting. We'll come back to what we were talking about, but here's something interesting. So I left my job in November 2011 and became full-time as a rapper. 2019 was the first year that I made more money than I used to make in my old job.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you feel like you were making good money at your old job?
I was making pretty good money for someone in their early to mid-teens. Yeah, I had a good job.
Well, so how were you making it by? It was just were you living below your means?
I was making money. Yeah, I minimized my expenses.
Got it.
And I was making money, just not a lot, right? Barely breaking even. I was covering all of my costs and making a small profit, but and I think that's an important part of the story, just to give perspective on things. Also, because there are people who think, oh, like, you're going into music to make money. It's like, dude, if I want to make money, I'd stay at being a management consultant for a big corporation. Like that's the guarantee, not becoming an independent musician. So yeah, I mean, and then 2020, 2021, 2022, things have
changed.
Yes, I'm doing a lot better than I would have been if I'd stayed in that. But
just out of curiosity, before we go back to Bitcoin, did you have in your mind, like, okay, if I don't make it by this time or this age or that, like I'm quit. No matter, it was just like, I'm doing it no matter what. That's awesome.
No, that's one thing people did not understand. When I was leaving my corporate job, so many people were like, give it, are you going to be like, how long are you going to try for? 1 year, 2? I was like, no, you guys don't understand. I'm done. I'm out. This is it. Like, I'm not turning back.
Good for you.
I will succeed. No. Look, and also I had an Oxford degree. So in my brain, there's no plan B, but it's also like, I'm never going to be on the street homeless, shaking a cup. Like I'm a very qualified guy, very educated, very confident. I'm okay. Also, again, thank God I have got a big family who, if somehow like stuff goes totally, exactly. So in my brain, that I guess there was that safety net in a way, but with the commitment, I was just like, no, I'm going to make it. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to inspire and motivate millions of people. And I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. And I don't know exactly how long it's going to take. I still don't know how big it's going to be. But I'm going to succeed. So no, for me, it was like, this is it.
Okay. So you discover Bitcoin. It's in that 20,000 range, late 2017, right?
I want to say it was in the 7,000, 8,000.
Oh, 7,000. Okay. So before it hit 20.
Yeah. Cause it ran from 7 to 20 in like 5 weeks or something.
Yeah. Okay. So you finally decided to go in?
Yeah. So, I was told, okay, how do I buy this thing? If someone was like, yeah, you use this thing called Coinbase. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go on Coinbase. And I was just like, all right, cool. I was running one of my pop-up shops at the time, I remember. So, I was in a shopping mall, all day long, making money, selling my CDs, selling my t-shirts, selling my hoodies and stuff. And then on my phone, I had the Coinbase app and I was like buying some Bitcoin. I was buying some Bitcoin sort of every day, like just buying a bunch more, buying like 100 pounds worth of Bitcoin or whatever. And the number kept going up, right? And I was like, this is amazing. Like this machine. And then to my credit, I did also read a couple books. I read Anthony Antonopoulos's The Internet of Money, part 1 and part 2. I read a book I remember called Crypto Assets. I can't remember who wrote that one, but I was like doing some learning and research about it at the time. And then, of course, it peaked at like the 20K in December 2017. And then there was the little dip in January. And I remember in January, I was like, okay, I'd made like some money from my pop-up shop and whatever. And I was, all right, cool. I'm going to take most of this profits and I'm going to just like put it I'm going to just put it into the crypto market. Like also I was just, everything was going up as well. Right. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, well, look, there's Bitcoin. And then there's all these other ones, like some of them still
Mhm.
exist. Some of them have petered out and whatever. And I didn't really have a strategy. I just kind of broke every investing rule that I already in my head knew I wasn't supposed to, but it was just like, the greed gets the better of you. And then, and then boom, 2-year bear market.
Oh
So
man.
yeah, so I remember at the worst point my portfolio being 75% down. But again, to my credit, I never sold. I didn't sell any Bitcoin. I kept buying it.
Great.
Um,
That's
and
great.
and actually, I'm glad that I went through this baptism by fire
Mhm.
because I kept looking into it and researching and
Mhm.
learning more and more, both from like a market perspective, but
Yeah.
also from an asset perspective, what it really was. And that helped me to not just capitulate when I was 50, 60, 70% down and sell
Yeah.
it all. In fact, I was like, oh crud. Like I wish I had more money to put into this thing. But I was quite limited with it. So go ahead.
What gave you the conviction? Do you remember maybe a moment from some of the books that you read, or just something where your brain shifted and you're like, oh, this isn't just a way to make money, but this is
Mhm.
transformative. This is not going to zero, even if it dips, and I'm going to keep buying? Because it takes a while for someone to be that strongly convicted.
Yeah, it does. So the first thing that appealed to me besides the number go up factor was the limited supply, the decentralization aspect, and the notion of this being a form of money that is not owned nor controlled by any government nor central bank. So for some people, those are things that put them off. But for me, I guess I'm someone you could describe as more libertarian minded for sure. And so that appealed to me. I was like, oh wow, this is cool. This is interesting. I'll be real with you. Another thing that made me and still gives me conviction in it is being a guy who's now in my mid 30s. I've seen a lot of different technological adoption curves in my lifetime. So I remember how people used to talk about the internet. I remember how people used to talk about mobile phones, how people used to talk about Facebook, used to talk about Amazon, all of these things. So actually the fact that there were so many people who were like skeptical, but then so many very smart people who were really interested in it, that also tilted me more towards it because I was like, well, you guys used to say this about, you said this about social media, you said this about smartphones, you said this about everything was just a fad, a bubble, a tulip bubble, and so on.
Mhm.
And I was like, no, because this currency has these properties, so that's not going to change. So even if temporarily people get caught on this emotional roller coaster of based on the price action, same thing happens in every other market. It just happens very quickly in Bitcoin and on the entire cryptocurrency market, to be honest. So I was like, well, the fundamentals haven't changed. And I was reading more and more about these fundamentals. And I was like, yeah, this is something that, I'm here in 2018, 2019, and yeah, this thing keeps losing dollar value, but the fundamentals haven't changed. The thing that drew me to it to begin with has not changed. So yeah, I'm seeing other people freaking out. Of course, I'm having even, some of my friends who got in late 2017, capitulating and selling everything and telling me that I'm crazy and whatever. And I'm like, man, no, I think, and also I went back and looked at the history, right? I went back and looked at the price history from 2000. I was like, oh, okay, this isn't the first time this has happened.
For
This is what
sure.
this thing does, right? It's had 70, 80% drops in dollar price before. So that I think that was though that combination of things was what gave me the conviction to continue to research it and investigate it and keep an eye on it and to put more of my hard-earned income into it. Um, yeah, that's where that conviction came from.
Well, so and you mentioned that in 2019 was the first time you made, more as far as income than your previous corporate
Yeah,
job. So how did that happen? How did your career sort of take off? Because now not only do you have your rap, your artistry, but you're also like I guess there are different words for it. I hate the word influencer. I hate that word. I think
sure.
it's a horrible word, but you have this media personality, you have a very big following, and you comment now on political and social things
Mm.
that maybe you weren't as interested in sharing your views on before the pandemic. I think the pandemic shifted things for a lot of people because we headed in one direction with the government and like the removal of freedoms and just some crazy decisions that they said were driven by science, but a lot of people question that, right? So can you talk to me about just like the last couple of years? Because I imagine that that's also impacted and transformed your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a big shift in late 2018, actually, late 2018. So especially from about 2015, I'd just been keeping an eye on what was going on in the world and listening to certain podcasts. I was listening to Joe Rogan a lot. I was listening to Dave Rubin. I learned about this dude called Jordan Peterson in 2016 and was following what was happening in Canada with Bill C-16. I was seeing this dude called Ben Shapiro and another guy called Milo Yiannopoulos having students burning down their colleges because these people were so controversial or whatever. And I started following, listening to what people at the time referred to as the intellectual dark web, people who were just having a lot of these conversations, and stuff just started to. I feel like the modern West started to go weird in around 2012, and this is something I kind of like felt this shift happen. And I used to have all the conversations, all the stuff you see me talk about on Twitter or hear me discuss in podcasts. I was having these conversations in my private life with friends and family from, over the past decade. And as a musician, I used to be just cautious in the way most musicians are about sharing my social, political, cultural views, because I didn't want to polarize my audience. I didn't want to put people off me. I also just, in a way, I guess I felt it wasn't my place. And perhaps mostly, I didn't think that my views were particularly all that unique or interesting. And then the world just started shifting in such a strange direction. And in late 2018, there was a particular thing that triggered it, but something made me go, I need to speak out more. I'm not seeing a lot of people saying what I'm thinking.
What was it?
Okay. So in late 2018, there was a person who was a student union president at one of the universities in the UK. And this is actually very relevant considering what's going on right now. He'd posted something on Twitter. Sorry, he'd posted something on Facebook. We're Facebook friends. He posted something about how he supports free speech, but people shouldn't be allowed to say hate speech and things that are offensive. Keep in mind, this is the president of a student union, so quite a powerful person in a university. And I challenged him on this on Facebook and was like, well, what do you mean? Who determines what's offensive? Who determines what's hate speech? You can't say you support free speech, but people shouldn't be allowed to say things that are offensive. So I got into this whole public Facebook debate with him. Long story short, one of the last things he wrote was, quote unquote, people like Zuby are dangerous and have ideas that get people killed. Someone like that should not be allowed on a university campus.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, okay, this has gone far. I was like, this nonsense is going very, very far. So I think that was like a trigger for me. And I just started tweeting a little bit more aggressively.
And did you have a pretty big following at that point or small?
At this point, I had across the social media platforms combined about 50,000 followers.
Okay.
About 50,000.
You just decided to become more vocal. You just had to be authentic.
Yeah, I just started to become I started to become a bit more vocal. Do you remember the thing where Kanye West wore the MAGA hat?
Yeah.
In the US. So I made a tweet about that, and that one went quite viral in the US. This is late 2018. So that's when some people in the US, a very small number, started kind of paying attention to me. And then, of course, in late February 2019, I posted the 9-second video of me doing a 230 kilo deadlift, saying that I keep hearing about how biological men have no strength advantage over women.
Yeah.
Watch me destroy the British women's deadlift record without trying. P.S. I identified as a woman while lifting the weight. Don't be a bigot. That was February 26, 2019. When I posted that, I had 18,000 followers on Twitter. That exploded. The video got millions upon millions of views. Within a month, I was up to 40,000 followers, then 50, then 60, then 80. Then,
and is that also contributing to like more of your records being sold because people are like, who is this guy?
Yeah. So what happens a lot, Natalie, is you probably see this every day. Tweets go viral every day, right? But normally the person behind the tweet themselves does not go viral. But what happened with me is there was that spark. And then from all the stuff I'd done in the past, all the legwork I'd put in, all the music I'd created, I'd started my podcast as well, January 2019. So I had this whole library and body of work that people then were able to discover. So it was like, oh my gosh, that's a funny tweet. And then it was like, wait, hang on, this Zuby guy's interesting. Oh, okay. Oh, he's a rapper. Oh, he went to Oxford University. Oh, he's got some interesting thoughts on society and politics and whatever. So I was invited to go on the Joe Rogan show. Joe Rogan discovered me off of that, right? He discovered me from that deadlift video.
So huge.
And so, he DM'd me and was like, dude, this is amazing. This is hilarious. He invited me to come on his show. I did the Rubin Report. Ben Shapiro reached out to me. Next thing I know, I'm on talking to Candace Owens and I'm on Tucker Carlson. I'm doing all of these things, UK, USA, all over. And from then on, from that flashpoint in February 2019, my audience has just grown and grown, organically. I think now across the board, I've got about 1.3 million followers on social media, up from 50,000.
It's so interesting because, and I've heard this from other people, and I've thought this myself, that like, you don't want to alienate people. So you almost feel like your audience will be bigger if you kind of stay more centrist, or you stay sort of neutral on certain topics. But actually I'm finding that it's actually speaking your views, and whatever category they fall into, which today pretty much I feel like people just identify it as left or right or this or that. That's when the following explodes. Did you find that?
Yeah. And here's what's really interesting is that my views have not changed that much in the last, my views and my overall message, my core message has not changed much since 2006. But what's happened is that the world has shifted so much that simply having common sense and having the courage to speak common sense against nonsense and to think for yourself and to encourage other people to do the same and to question the narrative and so on, that now there's such a hunger. There's such a hunger for that. There's such a thirst for it. People crave it. So it's funny. I mean, if I look at, I know my own beliefs. I know where my heart is. I know who I am. But like, even if I look at some of my most viral posts, they're all things that I feel like I shouldn't have to say. Right? Like, I'm like, guys, this is common sense. So much of the stuff, like, of course, from February, March 2020, there's a lot of people who also discovered me from my commentary throughout the pandemic, me just saying what I think is going on. And I'm like, I'm not there trying to be super controversial or to be contrarian just for the sake of it. I'm just like, guys, this is not making sense. What's going on? Right? Everyone's there freaking out about this virus. And I'm like, yeah, okay, there's the virus there, but like, what is this? Like, what's this lockdown thing? What's up with the mandatory face coverings? I'm saying this is someone who grew up in Saudi Arabia. And I remember all those Westerners, right, talking about how terrible it is that they make people cover their face in public, right? What is going on with, these mandates and this and that? I was like, this makes no sense. This is the biggest overreaction I've seen in my life. Not only is it an overreaction, but you are giving up all of these civil liberties and freedoms and rights that were fought so hard for people to get, and you're doing it enthusiastically.
Totally.
So I've just been from early on, I'll be honest, I was never scared of the virus itself. But I can understand people having those concerns. But if you're going to respond to something, number one, it should be proportionate. And number two, it should matter. Number two, you should consider the repercussions of the response, right? If you're going to lock down a society, that's going to have repercussions. If you're going to print trillions and trillions of dollars and pay people to stay home and do nothing, that's going to have some repercussions. There's this thing called inflation. If you take kids out of school for a year and then when you put them back, you force them to stay apart from each other and muzzle their faces for no reason, all of this stuff has consequences. So I could see that from very early on, and people were not considering it. And then the third part is like, if you are going to put a measure or a policy in place, whether or not it works matters, right? If you're like, I'm against a mask mandate, period. I don't care whether it works or not. But if you're going to do it, what data are you justifying it by? Right. If you're going to say, okay, because there's places where There are many places all over the world where anytime you are outside of your house, you're supposed to be having your face covered.
Right.
Right? Doesn't outside, right? Like people can debate the outside never remotely made any sense. Like
I know, I
not
agree.
even, yeah, exactly. So, and it's like, okay, so if someone is saying this is a good idea and this is something we have to do, it's like, okay, well, justify it. You have to justify it. You have to explain,
For
okay,
sure.
look, these are the downsides. And also, look, these are the encroachments on liberty and so on. There's a fundamental change in the relationship between the people and the government. And you might not ever get this back, by the way. So if you're going to do it, you need to have a darn incredibly good reason. And
Right.
to this day, it doesn't exist. Why? Because it doesn't exist. So I could just kind of see where this was all going. I was seeing this panic, and I was just like, guys, you people have to be cautious here, because when people are afraid, fear is a really dangerous, very, very dangerous emotion in many ways. And I was just seeing this level of fear and hysteria, not just in one country, across the entire world, in a way I've never seen it before. I've never seen so much bizarre human behavior ever. And yeah, and I was one of the few people with a significant following to be willing to go against the grain on this. I mean, I was called a grandma killer, anti-science, anti-vaxxer, conspiracy theorist. I don't care about people. I'm selfish, everything, you know? So it's kind of funny how now it's kind of like you can talk about this stuff, but early 2020, it was not popular to not be in favor of the lockdowns and the mandates. So, you know, and a lot of people are not willing to put their head above the parapet. And I understand that, right? I understand that. But if you refuse to, the consequences of not doing so in the long term are usually far more severe than the potential short-term consequences.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting to hear because I was struggling a lot with that working in mainstream news when all this was happening, right? Because we would receive these like wire stories and these studies, and this is what the White House would say, this is what the CDC would say. And like the messaging from every mainstream outlet, it was like masks, vaccine, this, no one's questioning it. And I'm sitting there, I'm questioning it personally, but like, you can't really speak out. And then there'd be a couple of us in the newsroom that would we'd be kind of against the grain, but not feel comfortable coming out. Like, I'm so grateful that now I've found a way to sort of, you know, have my own platform via Bitcoin of all things. But it's so hard because you do feel that, that need to conform when you work for a corporation that basically you're dependent on it for your salary. And it's like a slavery. Like, you know, it's like you can't say what you really feel because you're so scared of the consequences, which are mostly economic. Right. And I imagine, I mean, you say common sense and I agree with you, but I'm assuming you got branded as like right wing. And did that matter to you? Did you care? Were you, or
I don't care.
You just don't care.
I don't care if people call me right wing. That's not even a pejorative. It's like, okay.
But isn't it interesting that it's so like each one has such a negative connotation today, and we basically put people in two buckets. Like they tried to with Joe Rogan, and like he's just right down the middle, being common sense. Like I'm sure you feel, but it's like no, he's here, and then they put other people in this bucket. And like, how do you think we got here? Do you think it's because of the results of like this concentration of economic and political power because of all the money printing and like how we responded to the last financial crisis? Or like, how do you think we got here?
When you say here, which aspect are you referring to?
This polarization where people are either left or right, red or blue, and like there's nothing in between. You can't have common sense.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think in one way it's not new. Right? I think human beings from the beginning of time, as much as we are individualistic, people are also extraordinarily tribalistic. People can be tribal across all different things. People can be tribalistic when it comes to religion, when it comes to politics, when it comes to nationality, when it comes to race, when it comes to ethnicity, when it comes to gender, when it comes to sports team. Human beings are inherently tribalistic. And that's not something that is inherently bad. It's just something that's neutral. It's just something that exists, and it can manifest in many different ways, right? There's many positive aspects to tribalism, right? The loyalty you feel towards your family, feel towards your friends, right? You feel like you're part of a community. You're in this whole Bitcoin world. There's a community there. There's interest thing, there's things that link people together and bring people together. If you're, if you're part of a religion, whether you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, you're Jewish, whatever, there's a community. And that level of tribalism is not a bad thing. However, tribalism can be extraordinarily dangerous when it is running across the wrong aspects. That's largely what xenophobia or racism are. We've seen what that can lead to. That can lead to the worst things in the world, the greatest atrocities in the world, when that type of tribalism gets too toxic and it becomes a type of supremacy and a reason, supposedly, to oppress and hurt or even maim and kill other human beings. But that tribalism is always there. And I think as human beings, typically people don't really like to think that hard, right? Humans tend towards the path of least resistance in everything, physically, mentally, spiritually, everything. The world is a very, very complicated place. To view everything in shades of gray and to view people in shades of gray and to have nuance in your thinking it takes some effort. It's a lot easier to just make everything black and white, ones and zeros, binary. There's good people and there's bad people. There's my in-group and there's my out-group. I'm going to support everything within my in-group and go against everything within my out-group. I'm just going to listen to whatever my team says or whatever my team goes with. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to agree with it. I'm going to accept it. That is the easiest thing to do. So I think a lot of it is not, it's not something new. I think that things that exaggerate it and have exacerbated it over the past couple decades include certainly social media. Mm-hmm. Absolutely a factor, because it removes a lot of the human element. When you are on Twitter, especially, but any of these platforms, it's easy for people to forget that you're dealing with human beings. You're talking to human beings. You're not just talking to bots or avatars like it looks like on your computer or mobile screen. There is a human being on the opposite end of every message. There's no tone. You can't see facial expressions. You can't hear, there's no body language. So much of the communication is removed, and it makes it so much easier to throw people into these boxes. Having a binary political system in the USA, for example, where you've just got two major parties, you've just got red and blue, you've just got left and right, Republican and Democrat, that doesn't help, because it makes people feel more that they have to fall into a team, because in a way, if you are going to vote, you sort of have to, right? You might have some major issues with both parties. You may lean this way, but people feel they just have to totally adopt that one thing. And I think another part is immaturity. I think that we live in a really immature time. I'll be honest with you. I think we live in this age of extended adolescence, where you've got a lot of adults, some of them in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, who honestly are kind of acting and thinking like children. If they don't get their way, they throw a tantrum. If someone disagrees with them, they throw a tantrum. If people
weak
are being
men
led,
created hard times.
Yes, we're living in that part of the cycle, and it's just kind of, it's confusing. And then on top of it all is a level of cowardice. And people don't like it when I use this word, but that's what it is. People are not as courageous, I don't think, as they used to be. People are not as intellectually courageous. People are not as socially courageous. So even if someone knows that something is going wrong, they're afraid to say it. Even if someone can see that something's not right or something's not making sense, they're afraid to ask the question. They're afraid to put the head above the parapet, because there could be some backlash. Someone could call them a name, right? No one wants to be called a name. No one wants to be called, any kind of pejorative. And because of the immaturity, people are very quick to use those labels. So rather than contending with what someone says or trying to deal with their argument, they just want to call you a racist or a Nazi or a anti-vaxxer, or this person's anti-science.
And cancel
this
you.
person
just cancel you.
Yeah, try to. And I can understand why people have that fear, because it's not a totally invalid fear. There's nothing we fear more besides death. The thing humans fear most is social judgment and social ostracization. But that's often being misapplied, I think. And all of these things together, to answer your question in a very long way, I think all those things together are what have led to this moment in time where it just feels like the world is going crazy and people have lost their marbles. And it's also kind of strange because then you can venture into the real world and it mostly feels normal. And then you go back online and you're like, oh my gosh, people are crazy. And there's this weird, it's just kind of deranging. It's very, it's weird. And people are kind of unmoored from everything.
Does Bitcoin fix this?
um, it helps. It
How?
helps. You know, the money, man, money is an important part of society in many, many ways. Um, and most people don't really understand money on any type of deep level. And I think a lot of the stuff that funds the derangement and a lot of the way that a lot of bad things are able to go on, especially when committed by governments. There's everything from war to all the problems that come with inflation, the promotion of even certain ideas and things like that. A lot of that, in some way, rests upon the money system, right? If you can have endless money, you can have endless wars. If you can have endless money, you can have endless inflation, and your currency can be devalued, and then you have all the harsh consequences of that. If you have infinite money, you can move away from a meritocracy, and instead of promoting people and ideas that are beneficial and which work, you can float stuff that doesn't work. You can create fake jobs where people are being paid to create problems or at least not fix them, and so on. So I think that I think that from a sort of socioeconomic perspective, a lot of problems were caused by the movement off the gold standard, which didn't happen just in the USA. This is something that happened all over the world, and I think that for many decades, in different ways, we've been paying the price for that. I think even in some deep levels. I mean, one of the most important things in a society is family, right? Is the family structure, and the family has been assaulted in the West for over the past century, certainly over the past 50 years. There's been so much familial breakdown for a huge host of factors: sociocultural, economic. The economic factor is it's a big piece. It's a big challenge that a lot of people face, especially
Mhm.
millennials and upcoming Gen Z. The whole, whether you're looking at housing, you're looking at employment, you're looking at wages, you're looking at all of these things are problems, and they have all these downstream repercussions. So I do not think that Bitcoin fixes absolutely every problem in the world, right? Human beings are always going to have problems. We are not perfect beings. We are sinful creatures. We are wonderful creatures, but we're the best and the worst thing on this planet. And the way that people treat each other is something that we always need to be very cautious of, and which we always individually, I think, need to play our own role in doing our best to treat each other well, despite all of our differences and our emotions and our anger and our fear and all of that. So I think, the world is never going to be perfect. It never was, never will be. There's no country, no city, no place, no person that is perfect. And I think that utopian thinking in itself is actually dangerous. Whenever we seek to create a utopia, we always end up in a dystopia. So I think that's something to be cautious of. But I think the money itself is something that we need to fix. I think that is something that does need to be addressed. We've been running this experiment now for about a century, with the initial shifts off of the gold standard, and that's accelerated very much over the past 60 years or so. So I don't think it fixes all problems, but it will fix many in a way that doesn't, some more directly, but some, like I was talking about with the family and people actually being able to buy houses. I'll tell you another thing that's really important, Natalie, in a society, I think, is people being able to believe that the future is going to be better than the present. I think that's so important. And I think that's really underrated. I think a society is generally in decline when a majority of people believe the future is going to be worse than the present. That even stops people wanting to propagate the species,
Mhm.
right? I'm sure you've heard people, or
Yes.
people who say, I don't I don't want to bring a child into this world, right? I'm
Mhm.
afraid that my child is going to have a worse life than I did. And that's really sad. That's actually quite dark. And some of that is connected to the financial aspect. It's connected to the economy. It's connected to moral decline and so on. So I think that we need an injection of optimism, especially in these Western countries, especially after the past 2 years. I think we need a big dose of optimism, and we need reason for people to believe that the future is going to be better than the present. Because if people have hope, then we can get through anything as a species, as individuals, as communities. As long as there is hope and a belief that the future is going to be better than the present, we can get through absolutely anything. And I think that I love human beings. I love the world we live in. I think that we're so blessed and so fortunate to be here right now in 2022 where we are. And we should want that for future generations, and we have to fight for that.
I think that is so well said. And I can't think of Bitcoin as, you know, more than just like the perfect injection of hope
Mhm.
in society. I really do. Just to start to wrap up, we're in this crazy time right now where I think a lot of us had expected or predicted that the price would go to 100,000 by now. I think you and Pomp were on a podcast. Both of you were
Yeah, yeah.
predicting 100K in
Yeah.
2021. We were all there, right? So, we have a lot of volatility, macroeconomic environment, hiking rates, this, that. But where do you see this all going? Like, how do you see us sort of moving on to the Bitcoin standard when we live in such a society of not just polarization, but truly like economic debt, where the next thing I predict is politicians saying, hey, UBI, we're just going to helicopter money in. We're going to create that central bank digital currency. And so many people don't understand Bitcoin. They don't appreciate it. They don't have that intellectual curiosity that's required, and the narratives are skewed. So, how do you see this playing out over maybe the next 5, 10 years?
Man, that's a huge question. I think I'm someone who is an eternal optimist, I think. And one reason for that is in history, I look at all the things that human beings have been through and dealt with and managed to get through. And I think that every generation has its every generation has its challenges and has its battles and has to fight for freedom against tyranny in some way, shape, or form. In the past, it's been, we have to take all these millions of young men and put them on boats, put them on planes, and send them to literally fight to the death against direct tyranny. Right now, we're facing tyranny in a sort of softer and more subtle way. And I think that the battle to move some towards, say, a Bitcoin standard is going to be a battle. It's going to be tumultuous. I'm not saying it's going to be guns and boots on the ground and bombs, planes dropping bombs, but it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a straight line. It's not going to just be, number go up and everything is good. There's going to be governments are going to take action. There's going to be all sorts of attempts at regulation or even banning or, there's this talk of what they call them, CBDCs,
Mhm.
central bank digital currencies. People are going to be, pushing that, floating those ideas. There's going to be all kinds of, I don't think it's going to be a smooth ride. I don't think it's going to be a smooth ride. And I think also, every year more and more people learn about and adopt Bitcoin, right? It's some people went down this rabbit hole 10 years ago. Some people just started going right down this rabbit hole yesterday. Some people think the whole thing is a scam and is nonsense and is magical internet money. And again, I've seen these adoption curves. I remember when people thought the internet itself was a stupid idea, right? And I'm not all that old. And I remember when people thought I remember when people thought email was pointless. I remember when people thought Facebook was pointless. Oh, what's the point of Facebook? Like, no one uses it. It's kind of slow, whatever. So unfortunately, one more observation I've made about people is oftentimes people don't appreciate something until they kind of get slapped in the face directly. I think it's a lot easier if you're talking on a global scale, something like Bitcoin is a lot easier, I think, to explain and sell to someone on who's seen their currency get devalued by 90% over a couple of years,
Mhm.
right? Then they're looking at Bitcoin and they're not like, oh my gosh, this thing is crazy and volatile. They're like, oh wow, this thing maintains its value and it's deflationary. It's not inflationary. I think that, there's so many advantages to living in a country like the USA or in the UK, but I think that because sure, inflation is kicking in more noticeably now, but over the course of time, it's so slow and gradual that it's a little bit, it's a bit imperceptible. People don't really notice it and feel it. Whereas in other places, it's like, oh wow, okay, like our currency is not, our currency is not really worth anything. They've had hyperinflation. So
Mhm.
I think it would be ideal if a major financial crisis is not needed for people to understand the value and purpose of Bitcoin and for them to understand that their dollars are not truly backed by anything. Um, I hope that's not the case. I don't want to see, and I certainly do not wish nor hope for any type of major financial collapse or anything like that. But I also just recognize that people don't feel until they feel some type of pain in some way. They often don't respond, right? They think it's just something that happens to other people or it happens in other places. And it's not until it affects them in some way, shape, or form that they really pay attention. So we'll see. I mean, if you look at the way it's trending, maybe it's not trending as quickly as we want it to in certain directions. But if you think that this is an invention, this is a creation that's only existed for what, 12,
Mhm.
12 and a bit, 12, 13 years, that's not a long time. If you look at the progress that's been made, I mean, going up to what, a $1 trillion market cap last year from something that used to be worth
Mhm.
nothing, like almost less than nothing in a 12, 13-year span, that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I think we need to think on a longer time perspective. I think when you get really, really caught up in the short term, it's easy to lose faith and lose hope, lose money for sure. And that affects people emotionally. But I think if you zoom out a little and you look at the bigger picture, I think things are trending very much actually in a positive direction.
I totally agree. What would you say drives you? I mean, you're in a position now where you have influence, you have money, you have a successful career, big following. Like what drives you now? What do you want to do?
It's the exact same thing that always did, Natalie. And this is part of why I knew I had to leave my corporate job, which is I want to help inspire and motivate as many people as I can in this world through my words and through my actions. I thought I was going to do that just with music. And as time has gone on, I've realized that I have other things that I can offer to the world. So my goal is simply to reach and maximize. I can't reach it, but to maximize my own potential and to encourage and help other people to do the same thing in all sorts of different ways. So my goal is that simple, and that keeps me pumped up every single day. I love people. I genuinely love people. As critical as I can be of human beings and our nature, I genuinely love people, and I think that there's so much good in this world. There's so many good people. People have so much potential and so much ability and different talents and experiences that we can all use to help each other. And I'm kind of obsessed with that idea. So I try to live that and do my best to encourage other people to do the same.
I love that. Okay, last question. If you could time travel and go talk to young Zuby, whether
Mm.
he's, young kid living in Saudi Arabia or in boarding school in the UK, like what would you tell your younger self besides buying Bitcoin? Because that's like the go-to answer, but like you can't say that. So something other than that.
I tell myself that, man, you're going to be great. You're going to be great. You're going to make a big impact in this world. So believe in yourself, stay focused, be a good human, treat other people well, and it's going to pay off.
All right, awesome. Anywhere that people should come find you other than your podcast, your rap, like where else can people find you?
Yeah, sure thing. So my podcast and music you can find on all platforms, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and you can find me on all social media. Same handle, Zuby Music, Zuby Music. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of them at Zuby Music.